Tonight we'll leave the waking world behind and wander into a place of moonlit fairy tales, cozy dark fantasy and magical stories. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Leave a comment below and say hello, whether you're tucked into bed, relaxing after a long day, or listening beneath a rainy window somewhere across the world. You're always welcome here. And if you found comfort in these stories, consider subscribing and joining our growing circle of dreamers, night wanderers, and fairy tale lovers. Now, dim the lights, settle beneath the blankets, and let your shoulders relax. This is the story of the Lavender Water Dragon, a soft fairy tale for gentle nights. Hidden deep within a valley of endless lavender fields, there was a lake so still and beautiful that it often reflected the sky perfectly. On calm evenings, it was impossible to tell where the water ended and the heavens began. The lake glowed with shades of violet, silver, and soft blue. Wisteria trees draped their flowering branches over the shoreline. Fields of lavender stretched across the hills like rolling waves of purple silk. At sunrise, the valley filled with golden mist. At night, moonlight painted everything in silver. The place was called Lavender Lake, and beneath its peaceful waters lived a dragon. Not the sort of dragon found in stories of treasure and fire, not fierce or dangerous. This dragon was known as Apala, the Lavender Water Dragon. Her scales shimmered in shades of amethyst and moonlit violet. Long silver fins drifted gracefully along her body like ribbons floating underwater. Tiny lavender blossoms often grew between her scales, carried there by the magic she possessed. Most unusual of all was her breath. Whenever Apala exhaled, soft clouds of fragrant lavender mist drifted into the air. The mist carried a special kind of magic. It soothed worried minds and helped weary creatures find peaceful sleep. For hundreds of years, Apala had lived quietly beneath Lavender Lake. She preferred solitude, not because she disliked others. She simply loved peaceful things, the gentle sway of underwater grasses, the distant songs of frogs at dusk, the feeling of moonlight filtering through the water above her. And so she spent most of her days sleeping among crystal caves hidden beneath the lake. While she slept, her gentle breathing released tiny streams of lavender mist. The mist rose to the surface, then drifted across the valley. At first, it seemed ordinary, but wherever the mist touched, beautiful things happened. Night-blooming flowers opened wider, birds sang softer songs, animals rested more peacefully. Even the wind itself seemed calmer. The valley became famous among magical creatures. Travelers arrived from distant lands seeking rest. Moon swans nested beside the shore. Pearl otters floated among the lilies. Dream deer wandered through the lavender fields. Everyone felt safe there. Everyone felt peaceful. Everyone except one. A young cloud fox named Mira. Mira was small and beautiful, with pale silver fur and lavender-tipped ears. Like most cloud foxes, she could walk upon mist as easily as grass. But unlike other cloud foxes, Mira struggled to sleep. Every night, her thoughts raced. She worried about things that might happen. She worried about things that had already happened. She worried about things that had never happened at all. The more she worried, the more tired she became. The more tired she became, the harder it was to rest. Eventually, she became so exhausted that even her normally fluffy tail drooped behind her. One evening, an elderly moon swan noticed. "You should visit Lavender Lake," he suggested. "They say a dragon lives there." Mira blinked. "A dragon?" The swan nodded. "The gentlest creature in the world." The idea sounded impossible, yet Mira was desperate. The next morning she began her journey. For days she travelled across flower meadows, through silver forests, along rivers that sparkled beneath the moon. At last she reached the valley. The moment she stepped into the lavender fields, she paused. The air smelled wonderful. Soft breezes carried the scent of flowers and fresh water. Bees hummed lazily among the blossoms. Butterflies drifted through the golden sunlight. Everything felt peaceful. Yet, despite the beauty around her, sleep still refused to come. That evening, she sat beside the lake. The water reflected the rising moon. Wisteria blossoms drifted gently across the surface. Mira sighed. "I wish I knew how to stop worrying." The words disappeared into the stillness, or so she thought. Beneath the lake, Apala heard them. The dragon slowly opened her eyes. She had listened to the worries of creatures for centuries, and she recognized the sound immediately, the sound of a tired heart. Curious, she rose from the depths. The water shimmered. Ripples spread across the moonlit lake, and slowly the lavender water dragon emerged. Mira gasped softly. Apala was magnificent. Her scales glowed like polished amethyst. Silver fins drifted around her gracefully. Tiny flowers bloomed along her body. Moonlight danced across her skin, yet her eyes were warm and kind. There was no fear in them, only gentleness. "Hello, little fox." Her voice was as smooth as silk. Mira lowered her ears nervously. "Hello." "You are carrying many worries." Mira looked down. "I know." Apala floated quietly beside the shore. For a while, neither spoke. The dragon simply watched the moonlight dance across the water. Eventually, Mira sighed. "I don't know how to stop." Apala smiled softly. "Then perhaps you should stop trying." The answer surprised her. "What do you mean?" The dragon slowly exhaled. A cloud of lavender mist drifted into the air. The fragrant mist surrounded them, warm, soft, comforting. "The mind is like water," Apala said gently. "The harder you try to hold it still, the more it moves." The mist drifted through the lavender fields. The flowers swayed. The lake shimmered. The lake becomes calm, not because it forces itself to be calm. Apala nodded toward the water. It becomes calm because it allows the ripples to pass. Mira stared at the surface. The dragon was right. The water moved constantly. Tiny ripples appeared and disappeared, yet the lake remained peaceful. It didn't fight them, it simply let them come and go. Something inside Mira relaxed, just a little. For the next several days, she stayed beside Lavender Lake. She walked through the flower fields, watched butterflies drift among the blossoms, listened to moon swans singing at dusk, and each evening Apala shared stories. Stories about rivers, clouds, stars, seasons. Stories about how all things change, how worries arrive and eventually leave, how feelings move like tides, how peace is not the absence of thoughts, but the willingness to let them pass. Every night the dragon's lavender mist drifted across the valley. and little by little Mira began sleeping again. Not perfectly, but better. One morning she awoke beneath a lavender bush and realized something extraordinary. She felt rested for the first time in many months. The realization made her laugh, a bright, joyful laugh, the kind she hadn't heard from herself in a very long time. When she returned to the lakeshore, Apala was waiting. "I think you're ready." Mira tilted her head. "Ready for what?" "To continue your journey." The little fox felt a pang of sadness. She loved the valley, she loved the lake, she loved the dragon, but she knew Apala was right. Some places are meant to heal us, not hold us forever. Before she left, Apala gave her a small gift. A single lavender blossom. Its petals glowed softly with dragon magic. "Whenever your worries feel too heavy," Apala said, "hold this flower and remember the lake." Mira tucked it carefully behind her ear. Then she thanked the dragon and began walking toward the horizon. As she disappeared into the lavender fields, Apala watched from the water. A peaceful smile touched her face. Another weary traveller had found rest. Another heart had remembered how to be gentle with itself. The dragon slowly sank beneath the lake once more. The valley grew quiet. Lavender swayed in the breeze. Moon swans glided across the water. And throughout the night, soft clouds of fragrant mist continued drifting across the hills, comforting tired creatures, calming restless minds, helping dreams bloom beneath the stars. And deep beneath Lavender Lake, the gentle water dragon slept peacefully, breathing lavender into the world, one quiet dream at a time. The end. This is the story of the Moon Rabbit's secret garden. High above the sleeping world, beyond the drifting clouds and silver stars, there rests a hidden garden inside the crescent moon. Very few know it exists. Even fewer are invited there. The garden blooms only at night, beneath soft celestial light, where glowing flowers sway gently in warm lunar winds, and silver rivers drift slowly through fields of pale lavender grass. Tiny stars hang from the trees like lanterns. Moon moths flutter through the air like floating petals, and at the center of the garden lives a small white rabbit with shimmering silver eyes. The rabbit's name is Lumi, and every night while the world below sleeps, Lumi tends the flowers that bloom from human wishes. Some flowers grow from hope, some bloom from love, others emerge from quiet dreams whispered before sleep. The flowers are delicate things, soft emotions made visible, and Lumi protects them carefully, because if a wish is cared for gently enough, sometimes it finds its way back to the heart that made it. This is the story of a lonely astronomer named Celine, and the night she discovered the garden hidden inside the moon. Celine had always loved the night sky. Even as a child, she preferred moonlight to sunlight and stars to crowded rooms, while other people filled their evenings with conversation and noise. Celine spent hers quietly beside the observatory on the hill beyond the village. The observatory was old and wrapped in climbing ivy that glowed silver after rainstorms. Inside, the room smelled faintly of old books, candle wax, and lavender tea. Warm blankets rested across velvet chairs beside enormous windows overlooking the hills. And every night, Celine climbed the winding staircase to the telescope at the very top. She liked the stillness there, the feeling that the world softened after dark, the way the stars looked endless and gentle all at once. But beneath her peaceful routines lived a quiet sadness. she rarely spoke about. Celine often felt disconnected from the people around her. Not unloved, just distant somehow. As though her heart belonged more naturally to quiet skies and dreaming things than to ordinary life. Some nights she wondered if there was anywhere in the universe where she would feel completely understood. Then she would laugh softly at herself and return to studying the stars. Until one evening, the moon changed. The night began peacefully enough. Soft rain had fallen earlier, leaving the hills covered in silver mist. The sky glowed deep lavender as stars slowly emerged overhead. Celine adjusted the telescope carefully and turned it toward the crescent moon, hanging low above the horizon. At first, everything appeared normal, until she saw something she had never noticed before. A light moving inside the moon. Not a reflection, not a shooting star. Something small and glowing drifting slowly across the inner curve of the crescent. Celine leaned closer. The light moved again, then disappeared behind what looked impossibly like flowers. Her breath caught. Inside the moon, hidden within the crescent itself, she could see an entire garden glowing softly beneath silver light. Trees, rivers, flower fields, and moving carefully between them, a tiny white rabbit carrying a lantern. Celine blinked in disbelief. Surely exhaustion was making her imagine things. But then the rabbit stopped walking, and slowly, it looked directly toward her. The following night, Celine returned to the observatory long before sunset. She tried convincing herself the vision had only been a trick of light. Still, her hands trembled slightly as she turned the telescope toward the moon again. The garden remained there, brighter than before. Warm silver light glowed softly between the flowers while tiny floating creatures drifted lazily through the air like glowing petals. And once again, the rabbit looked directly at her. Then something extraordinary happened. The moonlight filling the observatory began growing warmer, softer. The air itself shimmered gently around her. And before Celine could fully understand what was happening, the telescope light wrapped around her like silk. The observatory disappeared. Celine felt no fear as she rose through the night sky. The stars drifted around her slowly like floating lanterns. Warm silver winds carried the scent of sugar, jasmine flowers, and fresh rain. Then the light faded gently, and Celine found herself standing inside the crescent moon. The garden stretched endlessly around her. Soft, glowing flowers covered rolling hills beneath silver skies. Sparkling streams wound through fields of lavender grass that shimmered faintly like woven starlight. Tiny moon moths fluttered between glowing trees where silver fruit hung from the branches like pearls. And above everything, the stars looked impossibly close. The ground beneath Celine's feet felt warm and soft like satin. Floating petals drifted endlessly through the air. The entire garden hummed with peaceful quiet. Then the rabbit approached her slowly. Up close, Lumi was even more beautiful. Its white fur shimmered faintly silver beneath the moonlight, and its tiny lantern glowed with warm golden light. Around its neck rested a delicate ribbon woven from starlight threads. "Welcome," Lumi said softly. Celine blinked in surprise. "You can speak?" Lumi twitched its whiskers gently. Lumi guided Celine slowly through the moon garden. As they walked, Celine noticed the flowers glowing in different colours. Some shimmered pale pink, others glowed soft blue or warm gold. "What are they?" she asked quietly. "These flowers grow from wishes humans whisper before sleep," Lumi explained gently. "Every hope, every longing, every quiet dream rises here eventually." Celine knelt beside a glowing golden flower. Warm emotion spread softly through her chest the moment she touched it. Suddenly, she saw a memory, a little girl wishing her family would stay together forever. The vision faded gently. Celine looked up in amazement. "The flowers remember wishes," Lumi said softly. As they continued through the garden, Celine noticed certain flowers looked faded and drooping. Others bloomed brightly beneath silver light. "Why are some fading?" she whispered. "Because the people who made those wishes stopped believing in them," Lumi replied sadly. The answer settled heavily inside her chest. Eventually, Lumi brought Celine to the very center of the moon garden. There, beneath a glowing silver tree, bloomed a single flower unlike any she had seen before. Its petals shimmered pale lavender and blush pink beneath the moonlight. Soft warmth pulsed gently from its center like a heartbeat. Celine stepped closer slowly. The moment she touched the flower, the world around her softened. Suddenly, memories rose gently through her mind. Nights spent wishing someone would understand her completely. Dreams she had abandoned quietly over the years. Loneliness she had buried beneath routines and silence. And beneath all of it, hope, still alive, still waiting. Tears filled her eyes softly. "This flower grew from your heart," Lumi said gently. "You wished for connection for so long that the moon itself began protecting the feeling for you." Celine looked down at the glowing flower trembling softly in her hands. "I thought I stopped believing in it," she whispered. Lumi smiled kindly. "No," the rabbit said softly. "You only became tired." Later that evening, while silver lantern fruit glowed softly above the garden paths, Selina noticed someone standing beside the crystal river. A young man. He wore soft cream-colored clothing embroidered with silver thread, and moonlight shimmered gently through his dark hair. He looked toward the stars with the same quiet wonder Celine always carried herself. Lumi noticed her expression immediately. "He tends the western gardens," the rabbit explained softly. "His name is Orion." When Orion turned and smiled toward her, warmth bloomed unexpectedly inside her chest, soft. Familiar somehow, like finding a forgotten song you once loved deeply. Together they wandered the moon gardens beneath drifting starlight while tiny winged creatures hummed lullabies through the air. They spoke quietly about dreams, loneliness, and the strange comfort of feeling understood without explanation. And for the first time in many years, Celine no longer felt distant from the universe around her. When dawn finally approached, Lumi guided Celine gently back toward the sleeping world below. Before she left, the moon rabbit placed a single glowing flower petal into her hands. "For the nights you begin forgetting again," Lumi whispered kindly. Celine returned to the observatory, just as sunrise painted the hills pale gold. Everything felt softer now, warmer, and sometimes, during quiet nights beneath crescent moons, Celine still looked upward and smiled softly, because hidden somewhere above the clouds and stars, the secret moon garden continued blooming gently beneath silver skies. where a tiny rabbit tended the wishes of sleeping hearts while glowing flowers swayed forever in the lunar wind. The end. This is the story of the centaur who carried lost travelers home. There is an old forest hidden far beyond the roads shown on maps. The trees there are ancient and silver-barked, their branches woven together so high above that moonlight filters through in soft ribbons of pale gold. Mist drifts constantly through the undergrowth. Wildflowers bloom in every season, and tiny lights float between the ferns like stars that have wandered down from the sky. Most people never find the forest, and those who do rarely remember how they arrived, because the forest appears only to those who are lost. Not lost in the ordinary sense, not people who simply take the wrong path. The forest appears to hearts that no longer know where they belong. And deep within that enchanted woodland lives a centaur named Atlas. Atlas had spent centuries wandering the hidden forest. His human half was graceful and strong, while his horse body carried the colour of warm chestnut bark touched by moonlight. Long silver-brown hair flowed down his back, often tangled with leaves and tiny flowers collected during his travels. Soft moss grew naturally along the edges of his antler-like crown, where glowing vines wrapped gently around polished ivory branches. Wherever Atlas walked, life followed. Wildflowers bloomed beside his footprints. Firefly spirits gathered in the air around him. Lantern deer emerged from the mist to walk beside him for a while before disappearing again into the trees. The forest trusted him, the creatures trusted him, and most importantly, lost travelers trusted him. For generations, Atlas had guided wandering souls safely home. Sometimes he found frightened children separated from their families, sometimes weary travelers who had taken the wrong road after sunset. And occasionally he found people carrying loneliness so heavy that they could no longer remember what home even felt like. Those were the ones who stayed with him longest, because finding a path through the forest was easy. Finding a path back to yourself was much harder. One evening, after a soft rain had passed through the forest, Atlas followed a familiar feeling drifting through the mist. Sadness, not sharp sadness, not grief, something quieter. A loneliness that had been carried for a very long time. The feeling led him toward Moon Petal River. The river wound through the heart of the forest, glowing faintly silver beneath the stars. Moon lilies floated across its surface. Crystal fish drifted beneath the water like moving pieces of moonlight, and along its banks, tiny moss rabbits slept, curled among the flowers. There, sitting beside the river, was a woman. She wore a pale blue cloak, damp from the rain. Her dark hair spilled loosely across her shoulders, and though she sat perfectly still, tears moved silently down her cheeks. Atlas approached carefully. He never liked startling people. "You'll catch cold sitting beside the river this late," he said gently. The woman looked up quickly. For a moment, surprise crossed her face. Then exhaustion returned. "You should probably be frightened," she said quietly. Atlas glanced down at himself. A little late for that? To his relief, a tiny smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. The woman's name was Nissa. At least that was the only thing she was willing to share. Atlas offered her a place beside his campfire, beneath a giant flowering willow tree. The fire glowed warmly while tiny firefly spirits drifted through the branches overhead. A lantern deer rested nearby, its silver antlers glowing softly in the darkness. Atlas prepared tea from moon herbs and wild honey. The scent filled the air with warmth. When he asked where she was trying to go, Nissa simply stared into the flames. "I don't know." The answer surprised him. Most travelers could at least name a village, a town, a direction, but Nissa only shook her head. "I know where I came from," she said softly. "I just don't think I can go back." Atlas didn't press further. He had learned long ago that some stories bloom slowly, like flowers. They open when they are ready. The next morning they began traveling together. Atlas knew the forest better than anyone. He guided Nissa along winding flower paths where dew sparkled like tiny diamonds. They crossed bridges woven from living vines. They wandered through groves of silver trees where glowing fruit hung from the branches like lanterns. Along the way, they met countless magical creatures. Tiny moss rabbits hopped through fields of lavender flowers. Lantern deer drifted silently through the mist. Cloud foxes slept curled beneath giant mushrooms, and overhead thousands of firefly spirits painted slow patterns of gold light through the evening air. The farther they travelled, the more Nissa changed. The sadness remained, but something else slowly returned. Curiosity, wonder, peace. Sometimes Atlas would catch her smiling at the tiny creatures gathered around their campsites. Other times she would laugh softly when curious moss rabbits climbed onto her blanket while she slept. Each laugh seemed to brighten the forest itself. Several days later, Atlas brought Nissa to one of the forest's oldest places, a hidden clearing called the Garden of Forgotten Things. The garden was unlike anywhere else in the forest. Thousands of flowers bloomed there. Each flower represented something someone had lost. A dream, a memory, a hope, a piece of themselves. Some flowers glowed pale blue, others shimmered silver or rose gold. Nissa walked quietly among them, then she stopped. At the center of the garden bloomed a single flower unlike the others. Its petals were soft blush pink. Its glow was warm and familiar. The moment she touched it, tears filled her eyes. Memories rose gently through her heart. Tender ones, dreams she had abandoned, happiness she had convinced herself was impossible, the quiet hope she had buried after being disappointed too many times. For years she had believed she was running away from a place, but standing there, she finally understood the truth. She had been running away from herself. That evening, Atlas and Nissa sat beside the river beneath a sky filled with stars. The water reflected silver moonlight while lantern deer moved quietly through the distant mist. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence felt comfortable, warm. Finally, Nissa looked toward him. "You knew, didn't you?" Atlas smiled softly. "Knew what?" "That I wasn't lost." The centaur gazed across the river. "I think most people know exactly where they are." He paused. "They just forget who they are." The words settled gently between them. Nissa looked at him for several long moments. Then she laughed softly. "You always speak like the forest, and you always listen like it." Something warm bloomed inside her chest, soft, steady, the way dawn arrives after a long night. Several mornings later, they reached the edge of the enchanted forest. Beyond the trees stretched open hills covered in wildflowers. The world waited there, bright and hopeful. Nissa stood quietly beside Atlas. For the first time since they met, she no longer felt uncertain. She knew where she belonged, not because she had found a destination, but because she had found herself again. And standing beside her was someone who had helped her remember. Someone who had carried her home without ever telling her where home was supposed to be. Even now, travelers sometimes speak of a beautiful centaur wandering misty flower forests beneath moonlight. They say lantern deer walk beside him, that firefly spirits follow his footsteps, and that no one who meets him remains lost for very long. As for Nissa, she returned often to the hidden forest. Sometimes she brought flowers, sometimes stories, sometimes nothing at all. Because some paths never truly end, and some homes are not places. They are someone who help you remember who you were before the world convinced you to forget. And deep within the glowing forest, beneath silver trees and drifting stars, a centaur and a woman still walk together along moonlit paths, while firefly spirits dance overhead and moss rabbits sleep among the flowers. The forest blooms softly around them, warm, peaceful, and full of gentle love. The end.